welcome you guys. I wanna thank you guys all for coming out here. We've spent a long time trying to plan a physical event, and it's been, we had our challenges, and it's very difficult to try and get something like this together, but we were able to make this happen, and I'm so glad to see you guys out here. There's some familiar faces, there's some new faces. I'm just so happy that you guys are all here. So how's that for sound? Yeah, we're just getting a little bit of distortion there. So with that, I want to welcome you guys to the 18th official Vancouver Psychedelic meetup. I think February was our last actual physical meetup that we had in the cafe, and that was just a huge event. And then the COVID came around, and then we've been doing Zoom meetings, and those have been amazing. It's been an amazing community, but once again, it's just totally different to be in a physical setting. So I'm really excited for this. With that being said, my name is Kristof. I'm the founder of the Vancouver Psychedelic meetup. We have Ken over there. He's going to be our moderator, and he's also one of the group leaders. And he's our event co-organizer, so he helped put this event together with us. With that being said, I just want to go through a couple things. Ken's going to go through a couple of the stuff related to COVID and safety and all that, so I'll pass the mic to him in a couple of minutes. But just in the meantime, due to the sort of limitations, so we have space for up to 49 people. Clearly, there's a bunch of people still coming, and we'll have some headroom, so we'll be okay. But with that, for those of you, I just wanted to mention, for those of you that, I think everyone signed in, so we should be good on that front. If anyone has not, Barb over there, she's got the clipboard, she can just sign you in, because we are required to submit those names and phone numbers. And then it's a list that's destroyed after 30 days. It's just for contact tracing in case anything happens. But hopefully that will be fine. Everybody's got masks on, so that's good. One of the things is, for those of you who can, we'd appreciate just a small donation just to help with the costs associated with booking the venue and acquiring the permit. If you are able to, my email is posted in one of the messages that I've sent out. It's just appreciate that just to kind of help make this happen. For those of you that have already donated, thank you very much. I appreciate that, and we thank you again for helping make this happen. And for anyone who's not able to, honestly, what counts is that you're here and that we're all together and we're able to have this event in a physical setting. So with that being said, I wanted to just mention that we have a group chat for those of you who want to join our community. And can you guys hear me okay? Is this? Yeah, okay. Okay, so I just want to mention that we have a community where we have an online chat, and we kind of keep this conversation going. So if you guys are interested in joining in, it's a great place to just, you can ask more questions, you can get to know people, and it really is an amazing community. So feel free to message me after on the meetup.com. There's a messaging form that you can send me a message if you're interested in getting into that, then we can get you into that group. It really is just an amazing community. A bunch of us we had a small retreat just this last weekend, which was just an absolutely amazing time. I had a chance to get to know a lot of you guys on a much better, more personal level. And it's just such an amazing group, just between the amazing dinners, the absolutely, our meditation, to the retreat, to the hikes that we did, the dancing, the energy, just getting to know you guys all on a better level. That was absolutely incredible weekend. And I'm looking forward to the next one once we can make that happen. So with that, I just want to give you guys a short idea of just the layout. We did have a little bit of delay, so we might go a couple of minutes over, but we'll try and keep on schedule as best we can. So Ken's in a moment, he's going to go through a couple of the safety stuff and explain the trip details that we're going to have coming up. Then I'm going to give a short talk with regards to legalization and medicalization of psychedelics and sort of some of the risks and things associated with that. So I'll kind of go through that in just a little bit. And afterwards, we're going to have a short period for questions and answers. You guys can ask questions. I'll do my best to answer them. And then we're going to have a little period for the trip tales where you guys can come up and share your experiences. Once again, Ken's going to go through that. And lastly, we're going to finish with the breakout session. So we'll divide into small groups with a group leader for each group. And then that way we can have a chance to be a little bit more of an intimate setting where we can talk and share and talk about psychedelics and things like that. It's one of the favorite parts of the group, and it's a really great place to meet people. So we're just looking forward to that. So So this is a topic that I actually approached with a little bit of trepidation. I was a little bit hesitant towards talking about something like this because it's actually a little bit of, you could say, like a soft criticism or a soft sort of critique of some aspects of maybe psychedelics or psychedelia. And I want to sort of mention like that for me, it's challenging because it's like I am a huge fan of psychedelics. Obviously, that's something that I'm very passionate about. In fact, recently I published an article that was specifically detailing the many benefits of psychedelics for patients and basically introducing this to a medical community. So this is something that I am very passionate about, but I also wanted to maybe take a step back and just look in a sort of lightly critical manner towards some of the risks associated with this. And I know people have different opinions on this, and I've had some chats with some people and some of you in the group, and I know everyone's got a different opinion on it. And that's why I want you guys to, of course, go ahead and challenge me and tell me what your thoughts are on it as well. But with that being said, I do want to sort of just give you that light outline of what I want to talk about. So the first thing is basically just sort of two problems I see, or at least potential problems or risks. And the first is a push for legalization prior to medicalization. So not giving a system of medicalization enough time to be established before aggressively pushing for legalization. And this is especially in an age of sort of more rapidly growing sort of psychedelic glorification or evangelization and a mainstreaming of psychedelics. So that's sort of like the first problem, and I'll get into that in a minute. And then the second problem is the abstraction of data from study outcomes being misappropriated to the general population as a whole. So that's sort of just the rough idea of what I'm going to talk about, and I'll get into the details and be a little bit more specific. But first, I just want to just clear up and establish what we mean when we say medicalization and legalization, because they both actually have a number of commonalities. Both of them are actually involving legal processes. They do involve regulation, and it is the government essentially that sets certain standards and how this is all divvied out. But to be specific, medicalization is the essentially the process by which we can provide or administer psychedelics and associated therapy to people for specific medical indications. So if a doctor and a team of medical professionals, you have a diagnosable condition or something, for medical purposes, you are administered psychedelics through a regulated framework. So that's sort of medicalization. If you take legalization, legalization is more like a broader extension of that. So you can go in, like you can go into the dispensary, you don't need to be diagnosed with anything, you can buy it, right? So if you think of say like esketamine, which is something you have to go to your doctor, you have to meet a number of checkpoints, and it has to be a very specific thing, and then you can get it administered through very specific channels, and it's often in a heavily regulated manner. Compare that to, say, buying a pack of cigarettes. You don't need a doctor's prescription for that. If your doctor prescribes you cigarettes, you probably should get a new doctor anyway. But you don't need to go through those same like regulatory frameworks. You can just, any licensed place, you can go in and you can buy them. So that's kind of, those are the fundamental differences. There's a lot more that goes into it. So with that out of the way, I want to kind of get into the first problem, which is, or at least the first risk that I see, which is the idea of conflating research outcomes. So as much as I'm a big fan of psychedelics, one of the things that I see often is sort of this appropriation of, or generalization of the outcomes from studies that we have. And these are then applied to the general population. So we look at a study and say, look at these amazing outcomes, look at how much, all these positive outcomes that we have. And we say, well, look, this is a reason to establish this for the general population, and you're abstracting this information there. And there's a bit of a problem with that, and then which is that a lot of the studies, I'm not talking about all of them, but the big ones that we talk about, like the ones that come out of like Johns Hopkins University or Imperial College London, all those ones, they basically use they have very specific inclusion exclusion criteria. So this actually creates it sort of creates a filtering effect. So the exclusion criteria will exclude a lot of people who are at highest risk of having negative outcomes. So if you have anything from things like heart conditions or even certain types of psychiatric conditions, so like schizophrenia, like schizoaffective disorder, or psychosis, or bipolar, and of course other things like heart conditions, past history like stroke and things like that. So people who are actually at risk of having at least a higher percentage of negative outcomes are filtered out. As well, we include people who are specifically at the highest, have the highest chances of having the most positive outcomes. That is to say, the people with recalcitrant depression. These are people who have had multiple different modalities and types of treatment to help them with no, essentially with no luck, like nothing actually has come out of it. So these people, in a sense, are at the sort of like the worst possible points in their lives, and almost any shift will only invariably be better. Like the potential difference between where you are now and where you could be or should be ideally is so great, you're more likely to have a positive outcome in that sense. And once again, this isn't to say that psychedelics aren't effective, like they are very effective for that. But what I'm getting at is that this produces results like that are very specifically for psychedelics, for medicalization. So the studies are designed because the studies are made so that they can bring, they can help support this process of making psychedelics available to people who need it most in a medical context. So it's not to say that they're bad studies. The science is airtight. They're going by the rules so specifically, and it's done very well. But once again, this is not the general population. So we do have to sort of remember that when we cite and reference the studies. Again, they are just one of the most profoundly amazing things, and the actual impact that they have in people's lives and in terms of society is absolutely incredible. But we have to remember what differences there are in the population or in the cohort and which studies you're referencing. So that's sort of, that's the first sort of risk or problem that I see there. To go to the second one, this is the idea of medicalization, the idea of making sure that we go through the process of medicalization before legalization. And there's several reasons for this. Medicalization gives us a couple of years where we have a chance to sort of acclimatize, and it's a sort of like a wide scale extension of the studies, because both the medical system is still learning things about it, like how to tweaking the doses and what kind of things to look for and different types of patterns. And they're essentially A, learning from it. B, it works as a really good tool for producing positive outcomes that will then be distributed and disseminated in the media. So this is sort of what you need, because people, like we're a fairly self-selected group. Like we know a lot about psychedelics. At least it's caught our attention. A lot of people actually don't. A lot of people, like even those who have heard about it, they'll be like, oh yeah, I took LSD once 20 years ago. It's awesome. But they don't know about the medical applications in the same way. And it takes a lot of time of repeated exposure of something for you to really start to understand what it is, what it does, how it helps you. So the medicalization serves as this bit of a grace period where we can have these positive results, but still be using it in basically as safe a manner as possible because of all the regulations. And this helps pave the way for legalization, which is ultimately the goal that we want to get to, right? So that you don't just need a very bad case of depression to be able to experience what you get out of it, but that you can actually have it maybe even for recreational uses, right? Like there's something beautiful, it's a different dimension of life, and it's something that if it's done safely and you know how to do it and how to administer it and you know the sort of the fundamentals around it, then it can be a very safe thing in society. But it is important that we have this time where it kind of gets acclimatized. Like if we look back, it was always, psychedelics were used by cultures all around the world for as long back as we can see. There's a very long history with that. But it still wasn't, it was something that was endowed in the culture. So there was cultural safeguards. People knew how to take it, what to take, what doses. And often there was shaman as well who would help guide it. So they would know who to give it to or who not to give it to, or if you're not in that place for that. It wasn't necessarily explicit, but it was something that they were aware of. So there were safeguards. And right now, a process of legalization is I think what we're trying to aim for, but not without the necessary cultural know-how and the cultural safety that comes around with that. So that's sort of, there's more to this, but that's the fundamental reason I see that the medicalization is an important step that we should not skip. And even if that means holding off with the legalization, like obviously decriminalization precedes all of this, right? So you don't get, if you get pulled over and you have a small dose of something on you, you're not criminalized for that, right? But it is important to take these steps in the right order, and that is something that I think is really important. So that there's kind of more to this. There's a lot more that I'd like to talk about, but I do want to kind of wrap it up a little bit. And basically, I just want to sum up with sort of what I find as the most important in this case is that just for us to be mindful in when we talk about the studies and the way we abstract the information, because there are actually studies that are done more, like a lot of the microdosing studies are done more on a general population. Like they have less, you can actually almost generalize that to a general population. But to be mindful of these studies and what the information comes from, and how, if we are generalizing that properly. And the other thing is just to, again, just remember that the medicalization serves more than one purpose, and just to sort of just reflect on that and consider that when what we're advocating for. So yeah, that's basically my thoughts here. I'd love to hear you guys' questions, and for those of you who disagree, 100% tell me what you think. But I'd love to, yeah, I'd love to hear some questions.
Would you consider that, are there certain psychedelics that would be able to be legalized like faster? Like let's say there's some psychedelics that they're all going through the medical model, but are there ones that are just by default safer, or you could see kind of being the first of the psychedelics to be fully legalized? Or do you think that they should all be grouped in one and then all of them at once legalized?
Yeah, so that's, yeah, so this is a good question. So what Peter's asking is with psychedelics, like when we're going through the legal channels, do we like, are there psychedelics that we should prioritize as legal? So ones that maybe are safer and that can be, so it wouldn't be like rolling them all out at the same time. It would be maybe start, if I'm interpreting it right, we'd be starting with something. So I don't 100% know the answer to this. My perspective on this would be, we would start with what we have the most data on. So something like magic mushrooms. So psilocybin is a good starting point because there's a lot of research on it, and we're at that point. Even Mark Hayden's talking 1 or 2 years till we're seeing that in some sort of legal context. So I would say definitely something like mushrooms, and definitely something like, I have some, we're talking about just in the medicalization. Are you talking medicalization or legalization?
So from medicalization to legalization.
Yeah, okay.
What would go first, right?
In a one-word answer, I would say mushrooms. But I'm totally open to that. But I think it's good to just sort of stick with the principles of following the data, because if we want to acclimatize and get those cultural norms set, we probably have the most amount of data on that. And also it's like half-life's a little bit shorter, so it's not, you're not locked into it for 12 hours like LSD or something, and it doesn't have the same cultural baggage.
So there's a lot of psychedelic drugs that will never be medicalized, right? There's hundreds of psychedelic compounds. Are those ever going to see the legal pathway? Do you think that they should?
Yeah. So what we're asking here is are these, like, there are some drugs that potentially may never be legalized, and if we should.
So there's hundreds of research chemicals that are all psychedelics.
Right.
They're not going to go through the normal medical pathways. No one's going to do clinical trials on them. Will they ever become legal, or how would you work through that question?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So there's hundreds of research chemicals that are they're just so far beyond that point, so they might never even be legalized. And my answer to that, once again, like, it would come down to the data, because there's certain considerations with a lot of these drugs. So just knowing the safety profile is, I think, a really big one, because when you're legalizing something, it's different than decriminalization. like I would fully support decriminalization even for those, but legalization is almost like the government basically almost giving you the green lights, like the go ahead. So I do like, my perspective is that the safety profile is huge, so, and that's both the physiological safety and how much data we have on it, as well as the psychological safety. So I think you're totally right. There probably will be ones that may not be, or certainly will take a while. But a lot of these research chemicals, like, remember, these are ones that are developed a couple of years ago, or in the last decade or last 2 decades. If you look at things like LSD, or if you look at things like mushrooms, they've been in use for hundreds or thousands of years, or certainly many, many decades. And on like the percentage of population that's done LSD a number of times in their lifetime, like it's you can create good longitudinal studies and actually gather sufficient data for that. So I don't know fully, but like my perspective, especially as an RN working in a medical community, I think that the safety is really important. If you're talking legalization, decriminalization once again is a different thing.
I believe the question is upside down. I'm sorry for taking my much because like before the chemical is legalized, you assume that it is illegal. But basically, if somebody came up with a new chemical, initially it's legal. It requires certain administrative action to make chemical illegal. So, like from this point of view, I'm questioning: aren't we just start assuming that all the chemicals that we're not sure about are illegal? I don't think it's correct. But you answer it because you remember.
Yeah, no, sorry, what was your name? Andre. So Andre's got a good point, which is he's talking about the fact that, and this is actually why things like, say, 1P-LSD is legal. So when a drug is produced, unless if it's specifically criminalized, it's technically, or at least you could say it's a gray area where it's technically legal. So I don't, to be fair, I don't know 100% of the specifics with that. I'd ask, maybe Andash would know something about that, but yes, that is a point that technically they are legal. But I guess what I'm getting at is once you have sort of like there's something about switching something from a scheduled drug back to being legal that sends a very strong message. So it's sort of reversing this. My personal position with new designer drugs is that I know lots of people who have used them and consumed them, and generally there has been no problems. But the thing is, you don't know. So there's a lot of risks because a lot of them are not necessarily designed for this. A lot of times they're attaching different molecules to it. So it's very similar to something that's illegal, but this way they can bypass the regulation. My inclination would be that I wouldn't fully support that only because of the legal problems associated with that. But it's, once again, if you're talking decriminalization, it's at some point people can make their own decisions. But it is something to think through. And I wish I had a better answer for you, but that's, yeah. We had a question over here.
Yeah, I was wondering, like if I understand you correctly, you're sort of suggesting like medicalization as some sort of large phase 4 study, which makes a lot of sense. Like you give yourself a couple of years to do sort of post-marketing in a sense to get more data. How do you assess the danger that after this time period, medical sector would sort of start gatekeeping those drugs, and like governments like to regulate things. I'm not sure about that. I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense of what you're saying, but I also know governments like to regulate, and that you would sort of get like permanent medicalization.
Right. So is your question, just so I can make sure I'm getting that right, so that when you have the process of medicalization, the government would maybe not legalize that, or that they would sort of hold on to their regulation or make it very difficult to access, or?
What I was sort of trying to convey is that medicalization becomes this permanent box, this permanent phase where it gets stuck in.
Mm-hmm.
How do you assess that danger? Okay.
Right. So if it gets right. So you're saying if it gets stuck in medicalization and doesn't go to the legalization process.
or it becomes legal, but only you get prescribed by a doctor.
Okay, so then it would still be medical. That would still be. So if it has to go through, if the gatekeeper is some sort of doctor or some sort of medical professional that has to sign off on you taking it, that would still be a medicalization process. So, and that can be a real worry that it doesn't escape that. But I think that's where a lot of these organizations come in terms of public awareness and all that, and help pushing for that. But there's always sort of these problems with medicalization. But I don't think that's inherent to medicalization. It's just the government sometimes, and also there's a lot of lobbyists and so forth that try to, because there's potentially a lot of money to be made, especially if you can only get a legal supply from one source. So in that case, you can have control over the prices, and there's a lot of money there. But I think that's sort of what the active process of the organizations that exist have a role in doing. And the idea is that we are advocating for that. So when it comes to like the two alternatives, like if your alternative is legalization first versus medicalization, I would still take the medicalization over the legalization, being fully aware that both have their problems and their setbacks. Perfect. Well, thanks you guys. Yeah, so I appreciate you guys like asking me questions that are, some of them are making me think about other things that I haven't encountered in that specific angle. But those are good things to bring up and consider, because there's a lot of complexity with all this. So, but with that being said, I think what we'll do is, if there's no more questions, we'll go to the trip tale. So I'll have Kenny can set that off for us. Thanks.
All right, so hopefully everybody thought long and hard about something they might want to share. So I will open up the floor to anyone. I'll open up the floor to anyone else. All right, Andres is not eligible for the prizes, but yeah, absolutely. Come on over in this direction. Yep. And your call on masking with this. Your voice will probably come through if you come through fine with the microphone. If you're wearing a mask, it's fine. You can decide what you want to do. Yeah.
So this isn't quite a trip tale. I have done some stand-up comedy in the past, and definitely a bit of that was on psychedelic drugs. So I'm gonna try to revisit that. Might be a bit rusty because it's been months since I've done that, but might as well give it a go. Yeah, and let me just bring it up on my phone. I'm switching hands. All right. So and actually I made a note here. So yeah, first up, just I think we should all take a moment to thank Kristof and Kenny for organizing this event. Like I saw the back end of this, where I'm in a group chat where they're organizing it, and there's actually a lot of work that goes into putting this together. So if we could give them a round of applause. All right, and let's get into this. I mean, this might be a bit different because I can't, hopefully see your mouths laughing, which is normally like a positive feedback loop for me, but we'll give it a go. So, as many of you, and I'm sure, I've been an enthusiast of psychedelic drugs for a really long time now, so probably a dozen years. And all throughout university, my roommates and I would be ordering drugs off the internet, and we'd be experimenting with them on the weekends. And I know you're thinking, that's exactly what every mom wants to hear that their kid's getting up to while they're away at university. But it's a good thing to try, especially at that time. And so how many of you order drugs off the internet? Okay, so a few of you, yeah, a decent amount of you. Okay, that's good. Yeah, so the really scary thing about ordering drugs off the internet is that when you're tripping and you're paranoid and you're freaking out and you're worried that the drugs were poisoned and that you're dying, you might actually be right. You might actually be dying. Thankfully, nothing ever really bad happened. I actually got quite good at being very high. And I work for the government, so it's actually a really useful skill set. It comes in handy all the time during those lengthy bureaucratic meetings. So, let me just see here. While in university as well, I would Airbnb apartments to earn extra money. And during this time, one of my favorite drugs, and to be honest, even right now, one of my favorite drugs, is 2,4-D-Fly. So this is a research chemical. It's a very strong hallucinogen, very psychedelic, very visual, and it lasts 16 to 18 hours at higher doses. So to be responsible, to be able to get to bed on time, I would take it first thing in the morning. And that would usually be great. I would go to the park, I'd be hanging out with my friends, high as a kite all day, it'd be great. It'd get dark, we'd go home, I'd go to sleep. It worked out great. Except when I had to meet Airbnb guests in the middle of the day. That was tough. The world would be upside down. I'm shifting in and out of alternate realities. I'm walking up to meet them. I've got my sunglasses on so they can't see the size of my my pupils. And I'm just telling myself, Ondrash, it's over. Ondrash, it's over. And I'm trying to compose myself, but I'm dissolving into the universe. I'm just trying to be chill while dissolving. And I'm talking to them and I'm just saying, all right, here's the key. The grocery store is there. The park's over there. Ground rules. No drugs in the apartment. No drugs in the apartment. If I so much as catch a whiff of weed, you're done. No fucking drugs in the apartment. It was always so tough. And, for whatever reason, those Airbnb guests, they never gave me good reviews. I don't know why. So I stopped the Airbnb, but I kept up the drug use. All right, and that's it. So thanks for hearing me out.
Awesome. Super courageous. One of the most nerve-wracking things to do. So anyone, any other takers? Peter? All right, yeah, bring it on up. 5 minutes start.
All right. So thank you, Kristof and Kenny, for creating this event. So I guess I'll have a trip tale, and I guess a little bit of background I can give is I love psychedelic drugs, but especially I've been experimenting recently with a lot of kind of drug combinations and stacking microdoses of, let's say, some LSD, cannabis, and I've kind of experimented with all sorts of drug combinations. So I wanted to talk about one that is really magical, and I call this experience kind of like accidental transcendence. So I went out with the intention of just experiencing pure pleasure, no need for healing or anything, just straight hedonism, right? So I start the day off with some LSD, and I'm with a good group of friends, and we're going for a hike. This just happened recently, and the experience was magical. We get back, I'm coming back down, and okay, let's step it up a notch. So we take out the ketamine, and so we start leveling up our our high, right? And so we're chilling in the couch, and my consciousness is like dissolving, disassociating. It's the first time in my life where I've ever felt like, normally you feel like you're in your head and all of a sudden you're looking around and you don't know where you begin and where you and your friends begin. It's all like one. And so we decide it's turning dark. It's nighttime and it's time to party. So we start the music, and we take another dose of ketamine. And this time I'm getting extra high. Like ketamine seems to magically take LSD and bring it up a couple of notches. So at this point, I forget my history, my personal history. I don't even know my name. I don't know who I am. I'm just listening to the music and dancing to the music. And it feels like I just have like a sacred duty to dance. You know, like there's nothing else that matters in life. I was just like following the music, and I was feeling like I was like being pulled towards my next movement. Like I wasn't even conscious of how I was dancing. It was just going on. So I'm having a great time, but I love stacking drugs. So we got to level up again. Take out the cannabis. That adds a little fun, but there's still something missing. So I have a DMT pen. So I'm peaking on ketamine, I'm on LSD, I'm on weed, probably have caffeine coursing through me. I take a big fat hit of DMT, and probably way more than I should take. And so I hold it in. You're normally supposed to hold in DMT for it to take its full effect, and then within 2 seconds of exhaling, it feels like I'm about to have a breakthrough. And like the music's playing, I'm in the middle of the dance floor. There's no way, I'm like thinking to myself, I can't just lie down here and like talk to the aliens. So in a split-second decision, I keep dancing. And all of a sudden, the room that we're in turns into a spaceship. And like, everybody starts growing dreadlocks and they look like predators from Alien versus Predator. We're all like dancing to the music, and then everybody who's speaking English, I actually can't even hear English. I just hear alien language, but it still makes sense to me. And like, I was like, so what was the point of this experience? Where's the transcendence? Basically, I go in with this intention of just experiencing a good time, but in that experience, you know, there's a bit of fear. Like I'm like super high, I don't know who I am. And so I find that when you're in those kind of deep experiences, even when you're just going at it with a recreational perspective, one of the things you can take away and apply to your life outside of psychedelic use is just like letting go of your expectations and accepting what is, and just going with the flow and having a good time regardless of the little things that might not be perfect, that might not be working out exactly as you planned. So sometimes, like I've mentioned to Andras before, sometimes getting like a little bit higher than you intended could have magical consequences that, you know, you look back on it after the fact and it ended up being so much better of a time than you would have expected. So sometimes you just gotta let go and you know, go with the flow. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, you want any more prizes? We've got a cannabis vape here, we've got some CBD tinctures, some surface things, and notebook. Your choice. One of the four items as well. Yeah. Anyone else interested? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah. I was gonna say, like, it can be any experience. It doesn't have to be like a crazy drug taking thing. It can be like you had a really good connection with something when you were taking mushrooms and you had like a profound epiphany or something like that. So any kind of psychedelic experience, or even if it's something like you were meditating and you had like a transcendental experience or something you want to share. So the floor is open for if anyone wants to sort of add in anything. This is your 2 minutes of fame.
Anybody? Would you like to come up? Awesome. Yeah. Whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay, thank you.
You do not have to introduce yourself. You don't have to share your name.
Okay.
Whatever you want to do.
You're probably thank you for hosting this. This is really great. I was part of the Toronto Psychedelic Society, and when I came here,
Try to get a little closer.
oh, sorry. When I came here, I was really looking forward to this. Finding a group that had similar values. My very first. This might be a downer after all of the great stories, so I'm sorry. But it's actually a good ending, I guess. My very first experience was I was desperate. I had no intention of going into psychedelics. I thought I've always heard like party stories, and I was like, you guys are crazy. Why do you want to do this? Like, just yeah. So my very first experience, I was extremely depressed, very depressed, and it was kind of my last resort. I don't think I'd be here if I didn't speak about. And so in that experience, it was actually one of the most profound experiences. I don't think it was with psilocybin. And I just experienced the most amazing connection that till this day, anytime I think of it, I'm just smiling from ear to ear. It was the first time I felt unconditional love, both towards me and towards others. And in that particular trip, I didn't realize until many years later, I was in a hut and I was in the jungle. I was in the Amazon. And I was just like, okay, this is interesting. I walked into a steam room, like an actual steam room in a condo, and I felt like there were other presents there, and it felt like there was like a ceremony going on. So I joked around, I went in, I sat down, like, hey guys, sorry, there was literally no one there. Hey guys, sorry for upsetting your ceremony. I'm just gonna join and be on the sidelines. And later on, there was a ceremony, there was a creek, there was just these sounds. It felt like I was in the jungle. So I went to the Amazon to do an ayahuasca ceremony. When I walked into the Maloka, or the hut that we did our actual ayahuasca ceremony, there's a few different huts. There's the yoga hut, there's a bunch of different, and I walked into all the different ones, and I didn't really, I don't know, nothing really clicked for me, and I completely forgot about myself, like my very first psilocybin trip. And when I walked into the ceremony hut that we were actually having our ayahuasca ceremonies, I was like, this place looks really, really familiar. And when I lied down on the mat and I looked up and I was like, holy shit, this is where I was on my very first trip. At least, I mean, in my mind, that's what I made up. I don't know if that's true, but that's what it felt like. And till this day, it was just the most amazing experience. It was almost like it guided me. And now I'm in the medical profession, and it's almost like I want to dedicate my life towards, I don't know yet, but towards this cause, just because I know it's helped me and I know it's helped a lot of people. And I think it's very important that we're responsible and we have a safe container. How that looks, I have no idea. But yeah, I just thought it was a really magical story, that the foreshadowing or whatever you would call it. But yeah, thanks for.
Thank you so much. One of these three things, if you would like, you don't have to, but if you want to check it out, go ahead. And that is a perfect example of a trip trail. And it is not a downer. It was an awesome story. Thank you so much. And I'm going to take that opportunity around you asking about how people can give back and get involved. Thank you, great. Thanks again. You asked the question, I don't know what it looks like or whatever. So their answers are there. So if you haven't heard of an organization called MAPS, there's two versions of that. There's MAPS kind of based in the US, and then from my buddy, Uncle Rick Doblin. But then, there's a version of MAPS in Canada, and it's headquartered here, right in Vancouver. They are also having like a Toronto chapter. But MAPS is a way to, is working on legalizing from first MDMA throughout, it's going to be US, Canada, and Israel. Probably sometime next calendar year, we'll have that medicalized. And then other substances, moving on. So MAPS Canada, right here in Vancouver, there is a big volunteer organization. They focus on fundraising, awareness. They're starting a podcast. There's tons of ways to get involved, actually. You can also, there's this Canadian Psychedelic Association, the CPA. They're more focused on federal level decriminalization, and I think Decriminalize Nature is their site, and they've been doing a petition for the government that they just got 15,000 signatures on, I think it was, or I don't know, tons. And so that's going to be pushing the federal government. They have volunteer opportunities. So there are ways to give back. If you couldn't remember anything I just said, pop notes in meetup, and we'll get back to you about it. But there are ways to give back, and there are ways to get involved. And those organizations will be the ones that lead training when it's time. If you work in healthcare, like when legalization happens medicalization happens, to be involved, whether you're a healthcare worker in mental health or other areas, there's those organizations will be the ones paving the way. So there are ways to get involved. MAPSCanada.org will be the first recommendation. But I volunteer. It's a field that's here to do, and strongly recommend it. So what I'll offer again. Anyone else want to
we've got more prizes, you guys.
Two more prizes, but again, if you want to share, it's fine. If not, you're gonna have to listen to me because I'm gonna do one. Yeah, come on up.
So I just wanted to share my first experience with psychedelics, and it was cannabis. It was in school. I think it's been 10th year of just ordinary school in Ukraine. I'm originally from Ukraine. Obviously, it was illegal back then, but I mean, who cared, right? Everyone's were smoking. So, what kind of excited me about this whole world of psychedelics and the psychedelic experience is that perception changes so dramatically, and you're able to understand things in a new way, even if it's illusion. It gives you some insights into the nature of your own mind. Basically, if you break something, it gives you, like some insights about nature, how things work in the first place. Like, what's the healthy way for it to work? How does it work in a broken or in an altered state? So I was very excited about the ways it was broken. It was because I wasn't like behaving really in a really adaptive manner. I was like all over the place. And of course, we were laughing on each other, and it was our first experience. We were not familiar what to expect from it, but what really stuck since then is this drive towards investigating how actually, like, what consciousness is, how it works, what are the basics, like, is that like information processing kind of phenomenon? Is it an emergent phenomenon? And it basically started driving my curiosity about studies, scientific studies around that, like robotics, for example, because you actually build in some creature that has to adapt in its environment, right? There has to be some basic level of perception, and it lays down this groundwork for, I think, for understanding what consciousness actually is in the long run. Obviously, we're too far from that right now, but I think we're making a good progress. I mean, as a scientific community, people overall, right? So that was, and I'm thankful and I'm thankful to these substances for these kind of experiences that basically directed the way I'm thinking right now, the way I'm establishing my priorities in self-education, in perceiving different phenomena that surrounds me. That's pretty much it. And there was another really, like, something that really clicked that day, and I realized, oh, this is exactly what I've been looking for all my conscious life. I really was looking for this kind of experience. I don't know, maybe it sounds weird. Maybe people, first of all, like scared away from these experiences, or they found them funny and not constructive, or maybe maladaptive. But for some reason, I was thinking, oh, I'm home here. I'm home with this altered states of consciousness, because they tell me something about the way my brain works, right? In a really funny manner, but anyways, it was constructive enough for me to derive the value. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Excellent. Perfect picture. You can pick between one of those two items. Right.
Thank you again. Any other takers? Anyone? All right. Good on. Yankees hat, New York City, my home. Thank you. You got 5 minutes.
5?
5. Yeah, I'll give you a 1-minute warning.
Okay. How can I make it in 5 minutes? First of all, thank you for the organization and the whole crew who showed up here. First of all, one question. Anybody from Iran here?
Yeah.
You're Iranian? Okay. So you can relate to the story.
It's a little closer.
Okay. So basically, of course, I'm from Iran. So there is this strict rule against any kind of drugs, especially opioids and everything, including psychedelics. Not so many people know psychedelics there. Most people, they just smoke hash or those kind of stuff. So it was not very easy for us to get stuff there. And definitely it's much easier for people in the West to experience with this kind of components, but not for us. So anyhow, I made some kind of progress in early days by sourcing some kind of cactus, which is it's called pachanoi, or it's not peyote, but it's just like a longer one. So they use it in Iran as a base for more like flowery kind of cactuses, and so we learned that is somehow psychedelic. So we used that for a bit, and then finally we got our hands on LSD. We did a couple of experiments in places like one in Persepolis. We did one trip, which was amazing. But this one I want to talk to you about is very personal, and to me, it's very profound. I didn't know that I feel comfortable talking about it. I even sent a text to my wife and asked for her, opinion, and she said, "Yeah, share it. Maybe this crowd would, benefit." Because I think all of us, when we try to go on these trips, we just want to see a confirmation about some sort of other side, something beyond this mundane material existence. So I was always hoping for that kind of experience to happen for me as well. Then we took this trip. We drove somewhere in the middle of the desert in central part of the country. It's a very isolated place. You might know it's called Misr. It doesn't matter. Anyhow, it's like 5 hours outside of the nearest big city. So we were like at the beginning of the sea of sand. I mean, there was no other settlement for 1,000 kilometers at least, because it was like just uninhabited place. We camped there. We took the acid. We had an amazing 8 hours. 3 of us, by the way. I called my friends K and S. So we had an amazing journey, and then sunset, and we wanted to get in the car and go back to our villa, which was like an hour drive. So we didn't want to camp. What happened was that we were looking at the sky. The sky was a new moon. So there was no moon in the sky. That's important. So we were looking at the Milky Way and the whole thing and the entire galaxy. And so it was like the best ending for the day, which was the day of my life. Then I saw light coming towards us from the direction of the village. So the light was moving as some kind of floating, as if somebody's having a lantern and just walking over the dunes. So it just got closer. How much time we have?
I'll give you a few more.
Okay.
Keep going.
All right. So the light kept coming, and we thought, of course, some villager or some shepherd. Somebody is just approaching us. So we said hi, no answer. He just kept coming closer and closer. And then we said, okay, we either just wrap our things up and just go, because that was the plan. So we just busied ourselves with the wrapping up and stuff. And while the two other SMK, they were working, I decided to get closer to the light, because it was now stopping somewhere, and it was not going anywhere. It was not going back, it was just there. So I just approached it, and granted, I was still on like last part of the trip. Like I was not sober 100%, but I saw it. I saw the light, and as I got closer, I saw that the light is not just a lamp. It's just there's like different kind of components to it, and different kind of colors to it. But the entire thing was very bright. It was so bright, but you could look at it and it was not harmful for your eyes. And then some sort of understanding came to me that this is it. This is the moment. Hello. This is what you were expecting to see. Now see. But I got scared. I just ran back to my guys and said, guys, just let them get the F out of here. I mean, this is not the place to stay. They said, what are you talking about? They were not believing, per se. So I said, guys, this is not from this world. This is from something else. And then they just tried to fuck off. It's not important. You're just making shit. Somebody's messing with us. Nobody would believe. And then we said, okay, just get in the car and let's go. As we tried to get in the car, we saw two more lights coming from the opposite direction. And these two were also very, you could see that they're not spherical, they were like oval-shaped, as if you could see like there's a head and there's a body. It was a body. I mean, distinctly, one was green, the other one was orange, very, very pale orange. And they just got closer and closer. And then I said, guys, now what? And then they said, okay, now we have to take this seriously. Because first of all, that was his first acid trip, actually. I should mention that. And he got hooked to one of these, and he was very responsive. And I said, let's get out. And then he was afraid, and I was afraid. And the cave just, we jumped behind the wheel and we just took get out. And then we couldn't, because we were like, we couldn't find a path. And then these entities, I call them entities, they were like circling around us. And S, who was, he was just, not vomiting, but he was like crying, and he was in a very, very bad shape. And I was scared, and finally I got out. With the lantern, I went, I just found a way, and we just drove back to the village. And these things, they were coming with us. I'm nearly finished. So anyhow, we got back to our place, and then we had so many discussions, and then we even fought over the thing. And somebody said, we blamed each other. Oh, you were scared. You were scared. I said, okay, you know what? What we're gonna do? We're gonna go back tomorrow night to the same place. This time we go with the camping gear, and this time we're gonna stay. And we did. And we did. We went back the next night, and we camped. These things again showed up, but they didn't get close. They were like, they were hovering in the sky. And by the way, this place is so isolated. There is no way that you see an airplane. There is no way that you see any kind of, flying vehicle, man-made flying vehicle. So basically, we went there, and the second night, there was a confirmation that we were not delusional the first night. So that was it. And then that was 12 years ago. So basically that was 2009, actually 11 years ago. After that, funny things happen. I mean, that's irrelevant, but profound things happen in all of our lives. Everybody, I mean, my life changed for better, I guess, because after that I started meditating and then just found my guru and, you know, started to make sense of the whole experience. The other one, S, he completely went crazy. So he started to making trouble, basically, for many people, for friends, and basically he got into, I mean, he started talking nonsense, like, you know, I saw God, and he started to, you know, basically making a big deal out of the whole thing. I haven't heard of him for many years now. I just want to make the final thing, and this is, I think this is the important also point. I moved to Canada 4 years ago. For the first time, I went to Victoria, and then we went to Ucluelet to stay the night. We got an Airbnb, and basically the place is owned by this kind of very cool lady, and she's basically she's kind of like a Rastafarian kind of dreadlock hair, and you know she was cool. We immediately liked each other. So at the night that we were staying there, I took basically I had a little joint, I smoked it, and I went to they had this dock, and there was a shore and there was a dock. The dock would go into the water for, let's say, like 50 meters. They were like having a fire, and I just passed by them and just said hi, and they said good night, how are you? I went to the dock, and then there I was standing, and then I looked up, and it was a moonless sky. It was again new moon, and Yuki is a very quiet place, dark. So basically, again, I saw the entire stars show, and then this thought came to my mind that, okay, 12 years ago, this happened for you there in that spot. It didn't leave you. You always thought about it. You tried to make sense of it. What you saw and whatever. Now it's time to ask again if you have a question. So I just started talking to myself, basically. I said, if you met me that night, and if you came to just show something, now is the time. And I mean, somehow I was like a little bit, I guess, hubris to just say, I demand you to show if you're hearing me. And then 10 minutes later, I heard people back on the shore around the fire. They started saying, "What is that? Look, look, look!" And then I looked up, and there was this light, same quality of light, just came. And then it just came down. It was like it was like one of those inlets. So there's, in front of me, there was inlet water, and then there was jungle. So that it just came down to the top of the trees, just popped out. That was it. Am I on time?
Thank you.
Sorry, it was I know it sounds weird. You don't have to believe me, but I said the truth. So, thank you.
This is the place to share these things. There's very few things you can say here that will throw us off. We've heard some, so don't worry. Thank you so much, and I guarantee there will be a couple folks wanting to talk to you later. So yeah, thank you for that. I was on the edge of my seat, so I gave extra time. I really do appreciate sharing that. And yeah, we are totally cool with the craziest stories. Peter will give you a couple ones later. So any last takers here? Want to share one more time before we get into the breakout groups? Sure, let's go ahead. Come on right up, last one. It's your choice. All right, thank you.
So I have to say that with my experience with psychedelics, it kind of reminds me of being a kid again, you know, because everyone has that inner child. And I remember when I was a kid, I had a super hyperactive imagination. And I imagined some of the craziest stuff sometimes, you know. A friend of mine, her and I lived in a little fantasy world, you know. We used to think, oh, sorry. We used to think that we came from a Pokemon planet and stuff like that. And that there was a world made of cookies. It was just called Cookie World. We just thought that was like the 10th and 11th planets of the solar system. So I don't know. I didn't really feel that way, you know, as I grew up, because everyone, you know, I'd like to think I haven't lost my sense of wonder, but I think whenever people grow into adulthood and they become more mature and more sort of aware of the world, like, I'm not saying you would necessarily get cynical, but you do it kind of sands the edges off that childlike, you know, innocence and wonderment and imagination a little bit, you know. And I'm still trying to get into a creative field with my work, you know, like I want to get into film, animation, stuff like that. So I don't know, I decided that was the path I wanted when I was around 16. And I started smoking weed when I was 18. And then a few years after that, I met up with this friend who, you know, she had connections to people who had mushrooms and acid and stuff like that. So, you know, and I asked her what it was like, and she said, well, you know, you just feel so unbridled, you know, like it just takes away those inhibitions that your mind, like the blocks of reality that your mind just puts up, so that you can actually be taken somewhere else that's totally beyond the normal realm that you see just every day. And I said, that sounds awesome. I totally want to try that. So I did. And I have to say, the first time, well, it was a different friend who gave me mushrooms the first time, and I wasn't too sure about doing it again because I had way too much. I was throwing myself around the room going, no, 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 because I felt like everything was sticking to me like Velcro. So that was a little bit scary. I mean, at first it was cool because it was outside at night, and all of the stars looked like fireworks frozen in the middle of like a giant navy blue blanket. And I was like, this is amazing. I don't even know what the world is made of anymore. So anyway, the second time I tried it, it was cool because I saw some like woodland elves and nymphs and stuff, and all these fairies, and I went on more of those journeys, and I saw that. I actually invented my own religion again, just like when I was a kid. It was called the Macallian, this was the Macallian civilization, but later on it was based off the 5 elemental dragons. And the main one was Iranian in the sky dragon. And I always saw him as this cloud in the sky, just eating up the world, you know, and it was just amazing. And so I saw that on shrooms, but I have to say, acid is my favorite because you not only do trip, but you can also be like really productive, you know. I wrote pretty much all of my 7th novel on acid, so that was cool. And yeah, I just have to say that it's an amazing experience. And peyote is great too, because that's the only thing that's ever been able to make me smell and taste hallucinations. I mean, usually you just see and hear them. Sometimes you can feel them, but I've only been able to smell and taste them on acid, you know. Anyway, so yeah, I guess it's time now. Is my time up? Okay, well, just to conclude, I have to say, acid's my favorite. Definitely want to try more of it. Haven't been able to find some in Vancouver, but when I had connections back in Victoria, that was a really good time. You know, it was a very, you could be productive, you could be balanced, but you could still just see the craziest things. The first time I tried it, I saw the Eye of Sauron and the words "I see you" in the clouds, the trees, everything. It was a little bit scary, but also amazing. And I've just seen some other crazy stuff too, including that childlike sense of imagination. That's more with mushrooms I find, but like with acid, sometimes you see some weird stuff like that too. I mean, people always think it's like this vivid, colorful hallucination that you just see that's not really there. I think it's more it just takes what is there and then just like creates patterns and different ways of thinking about it. Like you can think, hey, those gnarled stumps kind of look like tree people, you know, like dwarves and stuff like that. So I don't know. I think it just takes away the barriers of cold hard logic. That just opens up the floodgate for imagination to come in. You know, so that's why I really like them. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Well, you, my friend, have come to the right place. Thank you so much for sharing that. So I'm gonna kick this off. So yeah, we are. Thanks again for everyone for coming, and gonna get to the kind of the most fun part that I think everyone will agree on is kind of our group discussion, where we just kind of hang out and just chat about. Usually, you know, we try to talk about the subject, the decriminalization, medicalization, but of course, the world is your oyster. There's no rules here. Apart from can't vape in the park, apparently. Yeah, so I think what we'll do here is if anyone is planning on heading out, we would kind of, just because we want to pick out the groups, you can start to head out. But if everyone is going to stay, I'm shooting for groups of 5, and you can go kind of wherever you want. We have this entire field, fair access if you want to sit around on the grass or pick a spot here. It's really to anything you'd like to do. It's starting to get cold, so maybe hopefully put some layers. And yeah, so if anyone's gonna be heading out, thank you for coming. Appreciate it. And then for anyone who's gonna stay, well, I guess what we'll probably do is just count off numbers, line up and count off numbers. So Kristofs, is there anything you want to say, kind of closing remarks?
No, that's it, everyone. Thank you guys all for being here and for being part of this. And for those of you who stick around, I think it is amazing if you guys can stick around for the meetup, the little part where we actually get to have a small breakout. So it's a great time to meet and connect with everyone. But thank you guys for coming.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Go around the